Welcome back to the Punk Rock Theologian. Today we're going to be looking at something that we touched on in the last episode, so if you haven't seen the episode Let It Go, I suggest you go watch that one first. This will make a whole lot more sense after you've seen that. Forbearance, just as a quick refresher, it's the act of not exercising a legal right. That's forbearing. You forbear from exercising the right. That's why it's especially in a debt. When someone owes you a debt, the person who has the right to collect on that debt also has the right to dissolve that debt, to forgive the debt. When I first found that, it rocked me. It's like after decades of Bible study, I finally understood God's concept of forgiveness for the first time. I'm sure there are some fine theological points where this doesn't quite line up, but honestly, no human analogies ever really fully describe God. I see it like this. The original fall of man handed over the dominion of the earth to Satan. That same transaction established him as the creditor for all sin. Sin is an offense against God, not Satan, but Satan had a legal right to collect on that debt, if you will. I'm not sure how he got that right. I don't know how he pulled it off. I know that God established the rules of the universe, and it's not like Satan tricked him and outsmarted him. God had these rules and built them on purpose. Satan also understood those rules and got himself as the creditor for our debts. It's a lot like an investor or a business owner that understands tax law, so they're able to organize their stuff in such a way that they legally don't pay taxes because they don't owe any. That's not cheating with taxes because those laws are there on purpose because the IRS wants people to be investors and business owners. That helps the economy from their perspective. And so they put those rules there. And if a person understands how to work within that system, they can work it to their advantage. Satan understood the rules and did the same kind of a thing. That's how he got himself as what 2 Corinthians 4:4 calls the God of this world. And Ephesians 2:2 says he's the prince of the power of the air. Jesus himself calls him the ruler of this world in John 14:30. So somehow or another, Satan had worked his way into a legal position of power. This was not a surprise to God, but something that God put in place because he knew that he could work it to a greater advantage in the long run. So however it happened, however he did it, Satan owned our debt. He's the one who got paid every time a person sinned. And that right to payment meant that he put himself between us and God. We could not come to God because he had the right to stand in between and say, no, you owe me first. That debt exists. That debt must be paid. This is where Jesus comes in. That debt is death. Sin earns death. You see that from one end of the Bible to the other. Romans 6:23 is the most explicit, famous verse. The wages of sin is death. So every sin requires a death, but every human can only die once. And so we were stuck. We had no way out of this. But then Jesus comes as fully God and fully man. He became human so that he could die. Hebrews calls that lowering himself below the angels. He was still God the whole time, so he had infinite life, meaning that in a sense, he could die infinitely as well. Any math geek can tell you that infinity minus anything is still infinity. So no matter how much of a debt humanity has racked up over all time and ever will, past, present, and future, no matter how big that number is, infinity minus that is still infinity. Jesus had infinite life, so I'm not sure if he paid whatever that total balance was, which is something only God would know a number to assign to that, or if he just paid flat out infinity. I kind of think it might have been infinity because I envision this sort of scenario where Satan is all proud of himself and this massive debt he's accumulated. And it's like, look at this, all these things that they owe me, and like, you'll never get these people free. And Jesus goes, oh, that's a real cute number you got there. Here, have infinity. But this is the important part that we so often get wrong. Jesus did not just pay a debt he didn't owe. Jesus actually purchased that debt. He made himself the creditor, so now we owe him instead of Satan. That's really important because that means that now he's the one who has the right to collect on the debt, but that also makes him the one who has the right to forgive the debt. And that's precisely what Colossians 2:14 says that he did. Jesus paid an infinite price to not settle that account, but to actually purchase that debt like an investor. But then, rather than collecting on that debt, he will forgive it for anyone who comes to him and asks him. The key is that you'll only come to him if you believe that he has both the ability and the desire to cancel that debt. And it has to be both. You don't go to your neighbor asking him to forgive your mortgage because he has no ability to do it. He can't do it. But you also don't call up Visa asking them to just completely forgive your credit card debt because you know they don't have the desire to do it. They want to collect on that debt. Jesus has both the ability to forgive your debt and he wants to do it if you'll just ask. So now by doing this, Jesus has given us an example of how to handle debts. I really think this is the reason so many parables talk about debts and lending and investing. Like, Jesus was showing us how this all works. I mean, yeah, finances matter too, and he wants us to be intelligent with that, but he wants us to understand debts and debt forgiveness, because until we understand that, we don't understand forgiveness of sin. And I don't just mean your own sin, but when you are the creditor, when you're the one who's owed something, when someone sins against you, how do you handle that debt? Jesus made it very clear that he expects us to forgive our debtors just as he forgave us. You need to officially surrender your right to payback. That's what God did for us, and so that's what he expects from us.